Ma'am, first class is not for people like you. The terminal lights hummed overhead as Margaret Langley wheeled her small suitcase across the polished marble floor of Logan International Airport. Her sweater was a little worn at the sleeves, and her loafers had clearly seen better days, but her posture was upright, her chin high. The early morning rush flooded the space around her, men in tailored suits barking into phones, women in pristine heels sipping lattes, and screens flashing with boarding calls. But Margaret wasn't nervous. Not until she walked up to the first-class check-in line. She had never flown first class before, never even thought to. But this trip was different. This time, her husband insisted. No compromises. "I already booked you the best seat money can buy," he had said. No arguments. "Okay, you deserve it." And that's how Margaret, former kindergarten teacher, part-time volunteer, and proud wearer of thrifted clothes, found herself standing in a velvet rope line behind a businessman wearing a watch that probably cost more than her entire monthly budget. She clutched her ticket tighter, printed in bold letters. Atlantic Airways Flight 982, first class, CE81A. She stepped forward. "Next, call the polished voice." Margaret smiled gently and approached the check-in desk. Behind it stood a tall, thin woman with glossy black hair tied in a perfect bun. Her navy uniform was crisp, not a single wrinkle in sight. The golden pin on her chest read, "Miranda Burens, first class service manager." "Good morning," Margaret offered cheerfully. "I'm flying to Seattle on Flight 982. Miranda's eyes flicked over Margaret's clothes, a tired cardigan, sensible shoes, and no visible designer labels. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course." Miranda reached for the ticket and scanned it quickly. A slight pause. Then the smile faded altogether. "I'm sorry, but this can't be right." Margaret blinked. "I'm sorry. This ticket says first class." Miranda's voice was now lower, slower, "but I'm not seeing a matching profile." "It was booked by my husband, Mr. Langley," Margaret explained politely. "Everything should be fine." Miranda arched a perfectly shaped brow. "Mr. Langley, I see." She typed into her keyboard with manicured fingers, pausing only to glance at Margaret's ID. "Are you sure this wasn't upgraded by mistake, or perhaps meant for someone else in your family?" Margaret kept her tone even. "No mistake. My husband booked it for me personally." Another glance up, this time more pointed, more judgmental. Miranda leaned slightly forward. "We do maintain a certain standard in our premium travel experience. May I ask, do you have the credit card used for the booking?" "I don't," Margaret replied. "It was booked through my husband's corporate account." "Right." Miranda pursed her lips. Behind Margaret, a tall man in an expensive gray overcoat huffed audibly. Another woman in a sharp pantsuit sighed. "What is the holdup?" Miranda smiled sweetly at them, then turned back to Margaret. "I'm afraid we'll need further verification before allowing access to first class, ma'am. I can, however, offer you a seat in economy comfort at no additional charge." Margaret felt her face flush. Not with shame. No, with something else. Something simmering. She glanced at the velvet rope, then at the sign behind Miranda that read, "Experience true luxury, first class redefined." And she heard her husband's voice echo in her mind. "You're not less. Not to me. Never let them treat you like you are." "I have a ticket," Margaret said, quietly but firmly. "And I won't accept being downgraded just because I don't look like the usual first-class passenger." That caught more attention. Miranda's smile vanished completely. "I'm calling my supervisor," she said flatly, picking up the phone. The tension thickened. Margaret stood her ground, hands folded calmly over her ticket. She could feel the stares now. She could feel the growing pressure of everyone behind her. What they didn't know, what Miranda didn't know, is that Margaret Langley was not just a simple woman. She was the wife of Graham Langley, founder of Langley Biomedical, a multi-billion-dollar research giant, the very same company that developed half the equipment the airport's medical facility relied on. But Margaret had never needed to flaunt that. She wasn't wearing diamonds. She didn't carry a $5,000 handbag. She came from a background where value was earned, not displayed. "Mrs. Langley," came a voice moments later. A man in a dark blue blazer appeared beside the counter. His name tag read Alex Horton, Senior Terminal Supervisor. He smiled, but it was the same kind of smile a teacher gives a child who accidentally walks into the wrong classroom. "My colleague tells me there's some confusion about your ticket." "There's no confusion," Margaret replied, raising her phone. "But I'm about to make a call. You may want to wait before finishing that sentence." Alex's smile stiffened. "A call won't change procedure, Mom." "I think this one might," Margaret said, and dialed. "Put me on speaker." Now, Margaret Langley held her phone like it was a sword. She tapped a single name. Graham. Work. Direct. The line rang once, twice, and clicked. "Margaret," came a voice as rich and calm as velvet. "Is everything all right?" She turned her body slightly away from the crowd, but her voice was steady, loud enough for the first-class supervisor to hear. "I'm at Logan Airport. They're refusing to let me board. They're saying I don't look like I belong in first class." There was a pause. A heavy, dangerous pause. Graham Langley never raised his voice. He didn't need to. The world listened when he whispered. "Put me on speaker," he said quietly. Now, Margaret didn't hesitate. She tapped the icon and held her phone forward. "You're on speaker, love." The air seemed to still around them. "This is Graham Langley," the voice announced, suddenly louder in the echo of the terminal. "Who am I speaking with?" Alex Horton took a half-step back, suddenly looking unsure. "Bah." "Alex Horton, sir. Terminal Supervisor, Atlantic Airways. There's been a small issue with—" "No," Graham cut him off. "There's been no issue with anything, Mr. Horton. My wife has a fully confirmed first-class ticket on Flight 982, booked through my corporate account. She was to be treated with courtesy and respect. Instead, she's standing there being judged and humiliated over her appearance." "Sir, that's not—" "Stop talking." Alex froze mid-breath. "I'm currently on a conference call with 2 directors from your parent company," Graham continued, his voice cool and precise. "Would you like me to add them in?" Alex paled visibly. "Sir, please, that won't be necessary." "Then listen very carefully," Graham said. "You will honor that ticket. You will apologize to my wife. And you will do so in full view of every person who witnessed her mistreatment. You'll also place the attendant who questioned her appearance on immediate leave. Do I make myself clear?" Miranda, still behind the counter, took a small step backward. Her once cocky smile had disappeared completely. Her hand went to her badge, almost subconsciously, as if she knew she might not be wearing it much longer. Alex swallowed hard. "Crystal clear, sir." "Oh, and one more thing," Graham added. "I want the name of your regional director. I want a direct number. And I want a call scheduled within the hour. This is not over." "Yes, sir. Of course, sir." The call ended with a sharp click. Margaret lowered her phone, then slowly turned back toward Alex and Miranda. "Well," she said, softly, "shall we try this again?" Miranda's voice cracked slightly. "Mrs. Langley, I'm so sorry for the misunderstanding. If you'll follow me, I'll personally escort you to the lounge." "No, thank you," Margaret said coolly. "I'd like a proper apology, not a whispered one. The same tone you used when you suggested I didn't belong here." People in the crew were watching now, openly. Even some of the airline staff nearby had stopped what they were doing. The terminal was no longer just bustling, it was buzzing. Miranda cleared her throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began stiffly, I would like to sincerely apologize to Mrs. Margaret Langley. We made an error in judgment, and she is indeed a first-class passenger." Her face burned red, her voice trembling slightly as she added, "She deserves the same courtesy and respect we offer to all of our premium clients." The crowd was silent, but a moment later, a woman in the back nodded slowly. Then someone clapped. Then another. Margaret didn't smile. She simply nodded, collected her boarding pass, and stepped forward. Alex gestured awkwardly. "Mrs. Langley, would you like to be escorted?" "I know the way," she said gently. "But thank you." Inside the first-class lounge. The lounge smelled of citrus and polished leather. A soft classical piano track played in the background as Margaret entered. Every head in the room turned toward her, and stayed there. She wasn't dressed like them. She wasn't styled like them. But they knew now. One of the attendants, a young man in a neat vest, quickly approached. "Mrs. Langley, it's an honor to welcome you," he said, flustered. "Can I get you a drink?" "Tea, coffee, water's fine," she replied. "Anything at all, just let us know." He vanished, and Margaret sat down by the window. She didn't check her phone. She didn't need to. The situation was already spreading like wildfire online. Some teenager had filmed the confrontation at the counter and uploaded it. Within minutes, it had hit social media. Woman denied first-class seat because of her clothes. Then she makes a call that changes everything. By the time Graham called her back, the video had over 30,000 views. Later that hour, conference call with corporate. Back in a sleek boardroom 500 miles away, Graham Langley stood with a Bluetooth headset in one ear and fire in his eyes. On his screen, the CEO of Atlantic Airways, 2 board directors, and the head of customer experience. "I want answers," he said. "I want reform, and I want accountability." The CEO looked pale, even over video. "Mr. Langley, we are taking this extremely seriously. I personally apologize to your wife. The employee in question is being placed on leave immediately, and the supervisor will be investigated." "I'm not interested in scapegoats," Graham replied. "I want change. This isn't about Margaret. This is about every other person who's been denied basic respect because of how they look." He leaned forward. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to implement new anti-bias training. You're going to introduce a protocol that requires behavioral checks, not just outfit checks. And I want a written apology not just to my wife, but to the public." The CEO stammered, "Mr. Langley, that's unprecedented." Graham's eyes narrowed. "So is discriminating against my wife." A long silence. "Consider it done," the CEO said. Meanwhile, at the terminal, Alex Horton sat alone in the break room, head in his hands. Miranda stood stiffly near the vending machine, her arms crossed, her badge now gone from her uniform. "I didn't mean to," she started. "You did mean it," Alex snapped. "You just didn't think it would come back to bite you." Outside the break room door, 2 HR representatives waited to deliver official paperwork. Miranda's career at the airline was over. Back in the lounge, Margaret's phone buzzed again. Text from Graham. "CEO has agreed. They're issuing a formal apology and publishing a public memo about discrimination at their terminals. Change starts now." Margaret smiled slightly. She looked around the plush, glass-walled lounge, the world of privilege she'd just been shoved out of, and then re-invited into. It didn't feel like a victory. Not really. Because she knew that for every woman like her, there were hundreds who wouldn't be believed, who wouldn't have a billionaire husband on speed dial, who would simply take the insult and walk away. And that was the real fight. The world is watching her now. The lounge was quiet, but Margaret Langley's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. She finally picked it up. Her daughter, Sarah, had messaged 3 times. Then her assistant, her brother, a friend she hadn't heard from in months. Even her old principal from the school where she taught kindergarten years ago. The video had gone viral. Truly viral. She opened the link. Simple woman denied first class. Her husband's identity shocks airline. Over 2.8 million views. Hashtag #RespectUsNot luxury was trending. Margaret stared at herself in the thumbnail. Sweater slightly rumpled, calm but firm, standing across the counter from the tall, elegant Miranda Burns. In the video, you could hear the voice of her husband over the phone. Calm, powerful, cutting through the air like a storm. The comments section was a wildfire. This woman handled herself with so much grace. Total queen. She didn't even raise her voice. Iconic. People like Miranda shouldn't be anywhere near customer service. So what if she wasn't wearing Goofsy? Y'all forgot dignity exists. Now this is how you fight back, with composure and receipts. Margaret didn't feel like a celebrity. She still felt like her. The same woman who double-checked her grocery coupons and clipped articles from old magazines. The same woman who still thought twice before splurging on a coffee from a cafe instead of making it at home. But now, the world saw her differently. Back at Atlantic Airways corporate HQ, crisis mode, damage control. Now, the Atlantic Airways VP of Public Relations slammed her palm on the boardroom table. This is a PR hurricane. A woman was humiliated in one of our airports, on camera, and we have millions of people calling for boycotts. And to make it worse, she jabbed a finger toward the screen. She's married to Graham Langley. The man practically owns half our suppliers. The CEO, James Hutchinson, looked pale under the fluorescent lights. I've already spoken with Mr. Langley. He's calm. For now. One of the directors muttered, "We're lucky she wasn't a YouTuber or a journalist." "She's worse," the PR head replied. "She's a normal woman. That's what's making people furious. They're seeing their mothers, their wives, their sisters in her. She's not flaunting wealth. She didn't need to. She stood there in loafers and shut down a system that judges people for not wearing brands." Silence followed. Finally, the CEO spoke. "We're releasing a formal apology. Publicly. And I want all regional managers in retraining starting this week." Another director asked hesitantly, "And what about Mrs. Langley? A compensation offer?" The CEO stared at the screen. It showed Margaret sipping a glass of water, unaware she was becoming a symbol. "I don't think she wants compensation," he said quietly. "I think she wants the world to change." Arrival in Seattle. Something bigger waiting. 6 hours later, Margaret stepped off the plane, expecting anonymity. Instead, there were cameras, reporters, flashing lights, and a crowd holding signs. "We stand with Margaret. Digging ity hayes no dries cody. Thank you for speaking for all of us." Margaret froze. One of the Atlantic Airways attendants stepped in front of her. "Ma'am, we can escort you through the private terminal." "No," she said, shaking her head gently. "I'll walk through the front." The moment she stepped out, the crowd began applauding. Not the fake kind, not the over-the-top celebrity screams. Just a warm, honest wave of respect. Reporters asked questions. Flashbulbs went off. Microphones were shoved near her face. "Mrs. Langley, do you think airlines are biased toward wealthy appearances? Did you plan to expose them? Are you going to file a lawsuit?" She paused, took a breath, and answered just loud enough. "I didn't set out to be a symbol. I just wanted to board my flight like anyone else. But if this moment is bigger than me, I hope it reminds people that kindness, dignity, and respect aren't exclusive to any class." More applause. Someone offered her flowers. Another handed her a handwritten note. Then she saw him. Graham, standing beyond the crowd, watching her with pride written all over his face. She walked straight into his arms. "I told you," he whispered, "you have more influence than you think." The interview request and the dilemma. That night, as they settled into their hotel suite, Margaret's inbox flooded with interview requests. CNN, BBC, Good Morning America, 60 Minutes. Even Oprah's team had reached out. But Margaret wasn't sure she wanted it. "I'm not a fighter," she said quietly, curled up next to Graham. "I'm just me." "But they need you," he said. "They don't need a polished activist. They need a woman who wasn't trying to go viral. That's what makes your voice different." She remained quiet, thinking, until a message came through from someone unexpected. Message from a stranger. It was a private message. No subject, no fanfare. Just a simple note. "Hi, Mrs. Langley. You don't know me. My name is Layla. I work night shifts and save every penny for my mom's hospital bills. Last year, I tried flying home after she had surgery. I wore my old college hoodie. The airline pulled me aside, said I had to wait while they verified my upgrade. I cried in the bathroom. I thought I was alone. Until today. Thank you." Margaret read it twice, then a third time. She looked up at her husband with tears in her eyes. "I'll do the interview." That night, online firestorm turns into a movement. Twitter turned into a movement. Hashtag the Margaret Effect started trending. People began sharing their own stories. Was denied entry to a luxury watch store because they thought I was lost. Later bought a $20,000 watch somewhere else. Worked at a fashion magazine for 10 years. Still got judged at a gallery opening for wearing flats. I'm a medical researcher. Wore my scrubs to the airport and got questioned at check-in. Like my money only counts in heels. It wasn't just Margaret anymore. It was every woman, every man, every person who had ever been treated as less because they didn't fit a narrow image. And Atlantic Airways. Their stock dipped 6% overnight. Back in Boston, Miranda's world collapses. Miranda Burns sat alone in her small apartment, scrolling through the video that had just cost her everything. The comments were brutal. "That airline manager should be fired. Hope Miranda never works in customer service again. Power trips are dangerous, especially when they backfire." She stared at her reflection in the dark window. She hadn't meant to be cruel. Not really. But now, the whole world saw her as a villain. And deep down, she knew why. She hadn't seen a woman. She'd seen a nobody. And that was the problem. Back to Margaret. The moment before it all changes again. Late that night, Margaret stood on the hotel balcony. The city lights stretched for miles. The wind brushed her hair back as she leaned on the railing, lost in thought. She didn't ask to be famous. She didn't want a brand deal or a podcast or a book tour. But she did want change. So maybe, just maybe, she'd keep speaking. Not just for herself, but for Layla, for every voice that went unheard. She opened her notes app, began typing. "My name is Margaret Langley. I wasn't born rich. I wasn't raised to expect first-class service. But I was raised to know that how you treat people, especially when you think they're nobody, defines everything about who you are." She didn't want fame. She wanted justice. 3 weeks later, New York City, live national broadcast. The red light on the studio camera blinked on. A hush fell over the room. The host, a seasoned anchor known for presidential interviews and high-stakes exposes, leaned forward with the soft smile she reserved for moments like this. Across from her sat Margaret Langley, wearing a simple navy blue blouse. No diamonds, no designer heels, just the same dignity she carried that day at Logan International Airport. Only now, the world was watching. "Welcome, Mrs. Langley," the host began. "You've been called the face of modern class discrimination reform. The quiet woman who caused a global conversation. But you didn't ask for any of this, did you?" Margaret shook her head with a modest smile. "No, I just wanted to board my flight." The audience chuckled gently, but they were on the edge of their seats. "Let's go back to that day," the host said, "when you were told to your face that you didn't look like a first-class passenger. How did that moment feel?" Margaret looked down for a second, then back up. Her voice was calm, but powerful. It felt like I was being erased, not as a passenger, as a person. Like I had no right to exist in that space unless I was wrapped in $1,000 outfit or flashing a platinum card. It wasn't just a seat on a plane. It was what that seat represented to them, and to me. It was a reminder that we still judge people based on shallow standards. The camera cut to the host. She nodded, visibly moved. "What many people don't know is that you refused private compensation from the airline," she said. "Instead, you requested something very specific. Can you tell us what that was?" Margaret's expression shifted, firmer now. "I asked for public change. I asked that Atlantic Airways institute a full anti-discrimination and bias recognition training program for all frontline staff, not just at Logan Airport, but at every terminal they operate in. I asked for public apologies not to me, but to every witness that day. And I asked for transparency, not a cover-up." Applause rippled through the studio. And they agreed. The host asked. Eventually, Margaret said, "They knew it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about their reputation and their responsibility." Meanwhile, a stunning corporate shift. Back at Atlantic Airways HQ, everything had changed. Training manuals were rewritten, hiring policies revised, employee behavior monitoring tools installed. The entire culture shifted, and at the very top, the CEO, James Hutchinson, stood behind a press podium for a formal televised apology. "To every passenger we failed, we are sorry. What happened to Mrs. Langley was unacceptable, not because of who she's married to, but because no one should be treated that way, regardless of name, status, or clothing." A pause. "Our brand was once known for luxury. Going forward, we want it known for something greater, human dignity." The apology aired across every major network. Stockholders panicked at first, but then something strange happened. The public responded positively. People began flying with Atlantic again, not because they were perfect, but because they admitted they weren't and were willing to change. Back to Margaret. Her impact grows. Margaret never launched a brand, never hired a PR team. But invitations poured in, from universities, nonprofits, social forums, and eventually the United Nations. She was asked to speak at a summit on class discrimination in public services. Her husband, Graham, sat in the front row, arms folded with quiet pride as Margaret took the stage in Geneva. Her voice echoed across the historic chamber. "I didn't wear designer clothes when I was denied that day. I didn't carry a Channel bag or show a black card. All I carried was a valid ticket and a sense of self-worth. But for millions of others, that isn't enough. We're taught to play by the rules. But what happens when the system decides you're invisible, even when you do everything right? I didn't want to go viral. I wanted to go home. But if this moment gave one more person the courage to say, 'No, I do belong here,' then it was worth it." Thunderous applause followed. Not polite claps, but real, honest applause from diplomats, thinkers, and dreamers across the world. Miranda Burns, Redemption or Regret. Far away, in a smaller city, Miranda Burns watched the speech alone. She'd lost her job, her reputation, and most of her friends. But as she watched Margaret speak, something softened inside her. The shame hadn't gone away, but now it was paired with something else. Awareness. She picked up her laptop and searched bias training programs for hiring managers. Not because she had to, because she wanted to. One final scene. Boarding another flight. Months later, Margaret stood at a different airport. Still in her favorite walking shoes. Still in her thrifted cardigan. But now, no one looked past her. She approached the first-class desk. The attendant glanced up. "Mrs. Langley." "Yes." The attendant's smile was genuine, warm, respectful. "It's an honor to welcome you aboard. Thank you for helping us change how we serve." Margaret paused for a moment, then leaned slightly forward. "You're not just welcoming me," she said with a gentle smile. You're welcoming everyone who's ever been told they don't belong." She turned and walked toward the gate. No velvet ropes, no flashing cameras. Just a quiet, powerful moment for a woman who rewrote the rules without ever raising her voice.